This is presented by HPS Trade, Japanese freight forwarder in Thailand. Hello, it's IINO. I would like to talk about the difference between Freight Prepaid and Freight Collect. I have made a video on the same subject before, but I would like to explain it more clearly using a different expression. So, let's get started. Freight Prepaid and Freight Collect are very important in trade practice. If you are just starting out in trade, you may see these terms on BL or OB and wonder what they mean. As a forwarder, it is also one of the most frequently used trade terms when communicating with shipping companies and loading and unloading forwarders. The reason why this term is so important is because it is about money. This trade term is easier to understand if you think of it in terms of words. Freight refers to transportation fee. Prepaid means to pay in advance. Collect means to call for and obtain payment. Then, you may understand these terms. Freight prepaid means to pay transportation fee in advance. Freight collect means to call for and obtain transportation fee. Freight prepaid and collect are also related to Incoterms. Incoterms are terms and conditions of trade that specify who pay for transportation fee from where to where. Then, freight prepaid means that the freight is paid by the exporter, and freight collect means that it is by importer for collection payment. The list is easy to understand. Freight collect is ex works or FOB, which the importer pays the ocean freight. On the other hand, freight prepaid is CFR, CIF, DAP, DDP and so on, which the exporter pays the ocean freight. For more information about Incoterms, please refer to the link in summary section. It will help you understand better. And I mentioned earlier that Freight Prepaid and Collect refers on BL, but is on both House BL and Master BL as well. For more detail, please confirm the link in summary section that explains House BL and Master BL. It may be a little difficult for you to understand about Freight Prepaid and Collect in House BL and Master BL. I will explain them to you with examples. First of all, let's take an example of Incoterms with FOB and CFR. In case of FOB, the importer pays the ocean freight. At that time, Master BL generally says Freight Collect, and also says Freight Collect on House BL. And in the case CFR, the exporter pays the ocean freight. Generally, Master BL says Freight Prepaid and House BL says Freight Prepaid as well. So far, I think there is no problem. However, there are cases that freight of Master BL and House BL are different. For example, Master BL says prepaid and House BL does collect. In what cases does this occur? Let me explain with an example. Since this case has two types of BL, Master BL and House BL, this means transaction through a forwarder. The forwarders are divided into the export side and the import side, and they work together to arrange for the transportation of the cargo. They also do payment and collection of fee. This is the point. Let's talk about Freight Prepaid and Collect in House BL again. For ex works or FOB, the importer pays the freight, so it will be Freight Collect. For CFR, DDP, etc., the exporter pays the freight, so be Freight Prepaid. It depends on which forwarder, on the export side or the import side, is primarily responsible for arranging the ship. Let's assume that the forwarder on the export side is A and on the import side is B. If forwarder A itself, on the export side, makes booking with the shipping company, the export side will pay the freight, so Master BL will be Freight Prepaid. On the other hand, if forwarder B, on the import side, arrange booking to the shipping company, import side, as the main party, the freight will be paid by the import side, so Master BL will be Freight Collect. Do you have a clear understanding so far? I will explain a common case in practice based on this condition. In case of transaction proceeded on the import side, in the actual transaction between shipper, exporter, and consignee, importer, Incoterms will be FOB and House BL will say Freight Collect. However, there are cases that forwarder B, on the import side, cannot get space on the ship. When it happens, there are cases that forwarder A, on the export side, cooperates forwarder B, on the import side, to take the lead in securing space on the vessel. Then, Master BL will be freight prepaid because the export side is the one who books the vessel with the shipping company. In such a case, House BL will be collect but Master BL be prepaid. In fact, this is often the case in transactions between forwarders. For example, we often receive inquiries from forwarders in India and Japan about securing space on vessels for exporting from Thailand to India and Japan. Since we, as the forwarder on the export side, do the booking, the Master BL will be freight prepaid. And as I explained earlier, in the case of such inquiries from overseas, Incoterms will be FOB, House BL is freight collect, in the actual transaction between shipper, exporter, and consignee, importer. In most cases, the importer who is consignee pays the freight. The problem is that forwarder A, on the export side, has to pay the shipping company the freight in advance in accordance with freight prepaid. However, the actual freight is paid by the importer to forwarder B, on the import side. Therefore, it becomes a credit problem that the freight will be properly transferred from forwarder B to forwarder A. If you have a business with an overseas forwarder for the first time, the credit and collection of payment is a very important point. Freight prepaid and freight collect, as explained in this video, is a very important trade term because it is about money. If you don't have a good understanding of these terms, you may end up working without knowing who pays the freight, and there is always a risk of collecting the payment. I hope you will review the contents of this video as many times as possible until you understand it. If this video is helpful or interesting for you, please subscribe to my channel or share on SNS, as it will encourage me to keep updating it. That's all for today. Thank you very much.
In this channel, I explain about international logistics knowledge for your better understanding. I hope this video will be a good support for your logistics job. If you have any shipment from Thailand or to Thailand, please feel free to contact me IINO-san anytime. Also, I'm very motivated to keep updating these videos. If you subscribe, press good or comment anything. Well, thank you. See you next time.